Good evening and welcome to the Monday, January 22nd, 2018 Board of Education meeting. Tonight's meeting is the first of two meetings that we've called to ask for public input on Dr. Freeman's proposed budget. What I would like to suggest that we do here this evening is I've asked Dr. Freeman just to give a very, very short presentation as to what are some of the highlights in his proposal, and then turn it over to members of the public who are here. Now, a couple of things, a couple of ground rules if I can. The recording secretary has urged everybody who speaks to first of all identify yourself, but also if you could sign in. There's a sign-in sheet up on the lectern so that she can accurately reflect who is in the who spoke, and then it can be put in the minutes. We are very patient in terms of time. We think this is an important meeting. I certainly want to hear what people's thoughts are on some of our budget proposals, or Dr. Freeman's budget proposals. I would suggest, though, that if you try to limit your comments to a reasonable amount of time, and then if you want to add something later after everybody's had a chance to speak, that's great. We'll be glad to listen. I think all of us have received some emails on, I think I got 3 today on the start time issue specifically. What I would propose doing with the emails is just attach them to the minutes rather than read them into the record. It's not, I think I'm not sure that anybody wants to hear us read here out loud. So if that seems fair to everybody, I will ask Dr. Freeman to give us the very short version.
Very short version. Thank you, Mr. Bloss. I will note that this presentation was given in its entirety at the January 8th Board of Education meeting, and the content is at this point up on our website. So I will just, for purposes of this conversation, get us started by noting that every budget that we bring forward is built on the district-wide vision and mission and priorities that are set by the Board of Education. Each budget is guided by the past year's priorities and initiatives in which we are working, and by a set of budget assumptions. And I will not go into any of those in detail. I'll simply again remind you that all of those are on our website. The budget is built on current enrollment in the school district. You will note that some time ago we were watching a rather precipitous decline in enrollment, as were many suburban communities around the state of Connecticut. And in school year 14-15, we began to see that enrollment decline plateau. Also on our website, there is a 10-year demographic study, and the projections for that study showed that we should have at this point been down to about 3,000 students, and the fact is that we're not. We are approximately 175 students above where that projection shows. What happened in 14-15 is anybody's guess, but we did not continue the decline. The budget that the board has received from the leadership team, then this administrative draft budget, represents a $60,169,175 ask from the community. That is what we are requesting this year to discharge all of our responsibilities next year. It is an increase of approximately $1.5 million over the current budget year in which we sit this moment, and it represents an increase of 2.59%. I highlighted for the board in that January 8th presentation that each budget begins by looking at places that we can generate efficiencies. This year's budget specifically is built on a very low salary increase. When you look at the salaries in our school district, when you recognize that 80 to 85% of our budget is built in salaries and associated benefits, we worked very hard to keep those costs down. We have significantly lowered our tuition line in this budget. The times that we send students out of Guilford Public Schools to receive specialized education in some other location, we've worked long and hard to build our capacity to educate more of our students at home here in Guilford. And as a result, 1, I believe that we offer better services to our students and families, but 2, we're sending fewer students out to receive services out of district. And our principals and teachers have worked very hard to control the supply of material spending at their buildings. The flip side to that then is that each budget is also built on moving forward. As a leadership team, we do not believe that our job is to maintain a status quo. We believe that our job is to improve the services we offer each and every year. And even in lean budget years, we focus on improvements moving forward. This year, in addition to continuing the work that we have focused on, so the foundation of this budget is continued good instruction. This budget continues to support the coaching model that we have built in this district to support our teachers. This budget continues to focus on very favorable class sizes that we offer to teachers and families in this system. It continues to support the International Baccalaureate program that we launched this year. It continues to support our efforts in special education capacity building. But on top of that, this budget also includes expanded contact time in the area of music for all of our elementary students. We will in fact be doubling the contact time for elementary students in the area of music. It includes a new athletic coaching position specifically connected to our crew team, which is one of our most popular and highly subscribed teams. And specifically, it includes at this time a significant capital investment in the recarpeting of our original turf field. This is something in which we'll be splitting the cost of that capital improvement with the town. It's approximately a $600,000 investment. Our budget, the school side, carries approximately $300,000 to complete that improvement. All of that being said, I'd just like to point out that we continue to be one of the best returns on investment that you'll find in the state of Connecticut. The average cost of educating a student in the state of Connecticut is approximately $16,200. The cost of educating a student in Guilford is approximately $16,700. We're about $500 above the state average if you look at our investment per student. If you were to rank our investment statewide, that means we'd be investing at about the 80th or 90th place out of 169 communities in the state of Connecticut. But when you look at our student performance in any measure, when you look at our artistic performances, our athletic performances, or when you look at our academic performances, and it doesn't matter if you measure them by SAT, by Smarter Balance, or by college placement, our students consistently perform in the top 10%, in the top 20 schools. Sometimes we're the top performing district in the state of Connecticut, depending on the measure. So I just want to continually remind the community that we work very hard to build on what the families bring to our schools, to build on the interests that our students bring into our schools, and make sure that we continue to offer a positive return on your investment. So, Mr. Bloss, that's very much the high-level overview, but again, I'll remind everybody that this presentation in its entirety is both recorded and playing on GCTV, and the slides and information are available on our website.
Okay, perfect. So why don't I turn it over to you, the public. I do know, I'm sure, that several of you want to talk to us about start times. I do want to remind the board and remind everybody that there is a task force that is working very hard on that issue right now. I think there's a meeting tomorrow.
Tomorrow night in this building at 6 p.m.
Okay, so we are quite aware of the work that the task force is doing. Dr. Moore, Chris Moore, who is a former Board of Education member, has been working quite hard along with several other members of the committee to try to come up with a plan, a solution to try to implement later start times. But in any event, let me turn it over to you, and anybody who would like to speak, please just come up to the podium, and as the recording secretary reminds me, please put your name, give us your name and where you live, but also write it down, please. So somebody has to be first, so I don't want to call on anybody.
I know, shocking.
Yes, amazing.
Good evening. I'm Brian Wiley. I live at 69 Davis Drive. I have 2 kids currently in the system. I'm prompted to speak first by Dr. Freeman's last slide, and I may have missed something at the very beginning. I apologize, but I did notice that start times and bus costs was not one of the items that was mentioned in the formal presentation. Thank you for addressing it, Mr. Blatz, briefly. So, sort of a rhetorical couple of questions came to mind. My background's in finance, and I saw the closing slide titled Return on Investment, and I couldn't help remembering a couple of numbers that I've heard mentioned here in studies that were brought in by the board and by the very well-informed task force that's been looking at start times. So just backing up for a second, roughly speaking, in terms of tens of millions of dollars, the Department of Education budget is in the $50 to $60 million range?
60.
60, okay. So if we assume, it's an assumption, that the primary goal of the Department of Education is academic performance, not athletics, not extracurriculars. They're all great, and they add to the quality of the student population and the quality of life of the graduate. That's all good. The one number I remember hearing that was mentioned a couple of times was when, and I apologize if I'm misquoting, that sufficient sleep time for a high school student was tied to something in the neighborhood, this actually also ported over to athletics, something in the neighborhood of 20% improvement in academic performance. So let's look at the annual budget. $60 million ballpark. 20% of that is $12 million. That would be a one-to-one return on investment, depending on how you want to look at the numbers. So I guess what I'm getting at pretty directly is if you can get a $12 million value, and the numbers are all subject to question, but let's say we're off by a factor of 2, so it's only $6 million value for an investment of $500,000. If that turns out to be the cost of increased bus runs, I'd have to ask who responsibly can kick that can down the road for another year. Rhetorical question. Thank you.
Somebody else?
Good evening. John Beers, 105 Laurel Cliffs Drive. First of all, I want to thank the board members for participating in the difficult work of balancing fiscal responsibility and providing a high quality of education for our children. I know it's a challenge. I would also like to thank Superintendent Freeman and the school principals that worked with him to add 2 full-time music teachers at the elementary school level. I have 2 older children, both participate in the music program. One of them is at Baldwin and the other at Adams. Simply said, they love it. They get a lot out of it. I believe that school music programs can have a positive impact on students, the school, and the community. My youngest daughter attends Lakes Elementary School, and I would be in full support of additional music instruction at the elementary school level. So I think it's great. Thank you. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Somebody? I know there are more people than want to.
My name is Elise Lowe, 1211 Westlake Avenue, Guilford. I'm here to represent the League of Women Voters East Shore this evening, and I'm not here to register voters or to host a debate or even time you on your responses this evening. I'm here to present the League of Women Voters of Connecticut's position on school start time. It may be a surprise to some people that the League has another hat to wear other than voter service, but that is that we take study and come to consensus or concurrence on research and questions that have been developed on a given topic. And before 2006, the Wilton League of Women Voters and the PTA in Wilton developed the first policy on school start time, as I'm sure the Board of Ed knows. After they were successful in developing the language and process that they adopted in their town, they shared their research and policy with the rest of the local leagues throughout the state of Connecticut. We all came to the same conclusion that they had, and we adopted a statewide policy. So since 2006, we have held this position, which I will share with the board. Basically, it is in favor of adolescent students, middle school, junior high school would benefit academically, socially, and physically from starting school no earlier than 8 a.m. That public schools should delay academic instruction until after 8 a.m. That the state of Connecticut should support all local efforts to delay the school start times until after 8 a.m. for adolescent students through consultation and technical assistance. And also that state policy should be flexible enough to allow variation in local plans to implement these later state start times for adolescents. We've not had an opportunity before to speak to you on this topic. I didn't think that you had developed your thoughts far enough along for us to come before you, but I think the time has come now. Whether it becomes a budget item or doesn't cost any money, we wholly support your efforts into this change. And if I might wear a different hat and take off the league hat for a minute, and as a practicing lifetime musician, I totally support the superintendent's efforts and the board's efforts, I will hope, to double the elementary school music time. I was the benefactor of I should not say benefactor, the person who benefited from one of the strongest music programs in a public school system in Westchester County, New York, as I was growing through school. And I can only remember how much it meant to not just me, but to others who were musically inclined and those who weren't. And the fact that the research now shows that music spills over into mathematics, science, history, even foreign languages, if you're singing in foreign languages in your choral productions, that I don't think there's any other area in education that reaches so many of the other subjects. So I would just suggest to you that Guilford has a strong record of supporting arts and especially music. The 25 years that I've been a resident here, I've been very impressed with the arts, especially the music program in Guilford, and I would like to see that continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Bloss, Dr. Freeman, administrators in the building. Thank you. My name is Jon Mayo. I'm at 199 Village Pond Road in Guilford. I'm getting better at remembering to say that the more times I'm standing before you. We've been part of your budget process the last couple of years. I'm here tonight representing GHS Swimming. And Guilford Swimming is, GHS Swimming is our official booster club for our newly minted swim team. We discovered that this process works, and I'd like to reiterate my sentiments from the first meeting we had back in the fall when I said to thank you for including the swim team in last year's budget. We were strong last year as parents throughout the whole district. We had swim parents here from grades 2 all the way up through high school, and we can assure you that the pipeline is certainly there and it's continuing to grow. We had 20 plus girls with the team to start. Dr. Freeman requested we wanted 10 to start. We had 20 girls start the season. 18 of them made it all the way through championship seasons, and we had one very dedicated team manager also. Don't forget the team managers. We had 2 girls that made it all the way through the class championships, Class L championships. My daughter, Alex, made it all the way through to the Open championships, and she had a wonderful sophomore season, something to be extremely proud of. And we're really proud of all the accomplishments of all of the girls. We do have a pipeline with younger swimmers to come, and I just wanted to get that on record as well. And as you are aware, the adopted swim team last year provided a stipend of $6,000 to us, only for the head coach. And I'm here tonight to advocate for more funding to be allocated to the swim team to ensure our future as a Guilford High School swim team. There are 3 sports that currently fall into some form of, if you'd like to pay for play at the high school, that would be crew, swimming, and hockey. And as it turns out, just noticing that those are 3 teams that need water. Hockey's water is just a little bit colder than ours, but all 3 of those teams need water. As it turns out also, crew and hockey are mentioned in your current budget. Crew, we were extremely happy that there is going to be an assistant swim coach there. Swimming had a volunteer assistant swim coach this past year. We would advocate in the future that as our numbers continue to grow, we are probably going to need an assistant swim coach who was an extremely wonderful mentor to our girls this past season, and we would like to see that become official at some point. Hockey, I call your attention to the budget where there is a $20,000 rink time built into the budget. That's been there for a number of years, and obviously rink time is expensive, so is pool time. I have a bill from the Soundview YMCA that we will need to pay out of pocket for $3,150 coming from our 18 girls. In the future, we would ask that the budget line covers expenses for pool rental just as hockey is covered for the budget for their rink time. I would also like to call your attention to page 52 for athletic and other transportation of your budget. It's moving up to $132,000 this year for an athletic and other transportation funding. This fund is for transportation for athletic, music, and club events at GHS and Adams. Our girls swim team received a bill in the amount of $5,586.81 for bus transportation this year just for the fall season. So we are requesting that the athletic department budget can or will cover transportation for swimming as it does for other sports. Now, this is a blanket statement also including uniforms. Obviously, swim uniforms are a little bit different. It's not something that you can return a year later like a football helmet or a basketball jersey, but our uniform costs were over $5,000. When you count parkas, swimsuits, swim practice suits, caps, the parkas are paid for by the girls. That's so I could take that out of that amount, but you're still looking at a number around $3,000 there. So in the premise is what we're looking for here. All sports except sports X, Y, and Z are currently excluded, and swimming is one of those sports that was excluded when it comes to uniforms. So in summary, we are asking for funds to be reconsidered in the coming budget and in years to come as our numbers continue to grow. We got our start with you last year. We're not asking to build a pool. We're not looking for major numbers. I think if we were able to add somewhere between $8,000 and $10,000 to the budget to go along with a coaching stipend of $6,000, that we should be sufficiently covered. In that way that our booster club could do its job to take care of things like scholarship opportunities for girls who can't pay the amount to come onto the team, like the dinner at the end of the year, like the pasta parties for the girls during the week, and make this a truly great experience that is for all of them. So if we could possibly work that into the budget in future years, we would appreciate it. I do have one other point that goes back to last year's budget, and I'm not sure if it's an appropriate time, Mr. Bloss or Dr. Freeman, to talk about it tonight, but the boys team was built into the budget last year. It was also a coach's stipend of $6,000. As it turned out, the boys team ended up going as a co-op with Branford simply because Branford's numbers were extremely down. They were down to, I believe, 3 swimmers. So they came to Guilford, asked if we could co-op again with the Branford team. And it is my understanding that Branford is covering the costs for all of the Guilford swimmers. Transportation, pool rental, not a dime will be paid by the boys, I don't believe, for this current year. So that $6,000 is still sitting in this current budget. I don't know if it's proper to move things in a budget line like that, or if that could be moved over to the girls' team, but I would like to make a formal request to possibly do so if it's something we need to talk about, or if it's something that I would like to talk with one of your other advisors. That would be wonderful to do, but I'd just like to make sure that that's not getting kicked back into a general fund if at all possible. And that's about all I have. But again, the point that I made in the fall, it's still here tonight. We thank you for including us. We are going to grow. The girls has had a great year. It was a lot of fun. and we're looking forward to much bigger and better things to come. Like our hockey team did with the state championship last year, it's not too far off for our girls coming up. So thank you for your time. Yes, Mr. Stantz?
How many boys did we have on the swim team this year?
I don't have the full number, but I believe it's somewhere between 7 to 9, including the Brantford girl, or the Brantford numbers are adding another 3. There's also a swimmer from North Brantford who's part of this team as a one-man band, so it's one big conglomeration. As it turned out, our coach was hired by Brantford to coach the boys team, so she's the same coach for both the girls and the boys team. We are very familiar with her and 3 club teams, but there is another huge group of boys coming up, large group of 6th grade boys that are, I would say there's 5 to 7 just 6th grade boys right there ready to swim coming up soon. Is it up to 7? And 7th grade also. 7th grade also. So to answer your question, I believe we ended up close to 10 total for the boys team. And then when you combine the 2 teams together with Brantford and Guilford as a co-op.
Thank you.
But that $6,000 that was designated for the boys would certainly help our team moving forward. So I'm not sure how we can look into that, or if it's possible to talk about that at any point.
And I'd suggest that maybe Dr. Freeman can talk to Mr. Jarvis, the athletic director, and see
Yeah.
what the possibilities are.
No, that's fine. Mr. Jarvis sent me the bill, and we've been upfront and talked about this throughout the whole process, and he's been wonderful. It's just, we'd like to get things kicked off the correct way. That's all.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you all.
Hello, my name's Caitlin O'Brien. I live at 59 Davis Drive. And I just wanted to say that the parents of 3rd graders at Calvin Leet were glad to see the addition of a 3rd, 4th grade teacher for this coming year. We all know that class size is really key in education, and just strongly support this addition to the budget. Thanks.
Thank you.
And people are really following instructions about that. This is like really encouraging.
Feels good, right?
Wow.
Thank you.
Takes longer to write our names than it does to talk, I think. I'm Rebekah Legrand. I'm at 101 Sage Hollow Road. And I came here on behalf of the crew team. I'm on the Booster Club as well as Guilford Rowing Association Board. I was very pleased to see Guilford crew up there. I hadn't realized that was in there, and that was one of the things that I was coming to talk about, so thank you very much. Currently, just in terms of numbers, I think everybody knows that with boys and girls, last year we had 88 students on the team, with 1 coach and 1 assistant coach being provided by from the school. So with those numbers, we're looking for obviously additional coaching. I see that's up there. I don't know if that's for 1 or for 2. If we could have 2, that's even better. The additional money comes from Guilford Rowing, and that's from fees that the kids pay in. There's fundraising involved and things like that to make sure that we're able to cover that. There's also the cost of, I know you were mentioning the water time. We don't pay water time. We're using Lake Quantapug. As far as I know, there's not a fee for that, but there are boats, and those boats are extremely expensive, even though we get them used. The repairs from them, we had an incident this past year where somebody actually backed into them up at Lake Quantapug, and we had to go through and repair that. So the costs become thousands just on those kinds of things. So whatever amount of money that we can get for coaching and for the additional expenses, membership for the rowing associations that we have to belong to in order for the students to row, as well as for the fees for the races, would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dawn Emmerman. I'm at 64 Flagmarsh Road. I have 1 daughter at Cox, and I have another one coming up, so I want to keep it going. I thought I'd have to say a lot for the music, but then you put it up there. I didn't see it when I looked in the budget, so I'm really happy I don't have to make a long speech. But I do just want to point out, with the increased academic demands on our kids these days, that they need a creative outlet. They just need that. It builds their brains in ways that the academics can't. It helps their verbal skills, their math skills. It increases SAT scores. But obviously you know that because you have that. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.
My name is Jennifer Sidney Silva, and I live at 407 Schoolside Lane. Thank you to the board, Dr. Freeman, and the administration for your diligence in this process. I'm the parent of 2 Guilford Lakes students. I'm delighted to see the inclusion of additional elementary school music teachers in the proposed budget. My own involvement in music has been pivotal in my life, allowing me to travel to other countries in musical and cultural exchange, offer comfort to hospital and hospice patients and their families under difficult circumstances, fundraise for nonprofits, and so much more. Now I watch my daughters developing into budding musical and visual artists. I sincerely hope these positions remain in the final version of this budget, and I would also like to see an additional elementary school art position added into it, as has been discussed at previous board meetings. In today's world, the arts as a whole continue to be incredible media for our students to develop effective expression and communication, creativity, and the ability to work collaboratively. Indeed, the new IB program at the high school has a creativity component, and it would make sense to emphasize this in the lower grades as well. I am also here in favor of later school start times. I worked as a school counselor in public schools for 10 years in the North Haven, Amity, and Old Saybrook school districts. In 1999, on my second day as a neophyte school counselor at North Haven High School, I had to initiate the emergency hospitalization for a student who was suicidal. Mental health issues among students and suicidality were and continue to be an extremely serious issue. As the board and superintendent are aware, there is a significant rise in suicidal behavior across the country and in Guilford specifically. My understanding is that the rates of suicide attempts in our town, as reported by students, is more than twice the average of students across the nation. There is a direct link between sleep, circadian rhythm, and mental health, and it is our duty to provide a healthy, safe learning environment to our students. As stated in the 2017-18 district priorities, our schools will be safe, healthy, and caring places for learning built on supportive relationships and positive decision-making. What better place to start than with our students' physical and mental well-being? I therefore request the implementation of a later school start time for the 2018-19 school year. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have enough for everybody, unfortunately.
You can just, we'll pass them down.
Okay. If you would maybe pass them to the people who are newer to the board, and then I'll get you guys more.
Oh, you may have come in late. I said I was going to attach these to the minutes.
Oh, I did come in late.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I handed out there were a few messages of support from residents of Guilford who are parents of Guilford students, who are grandparents of Guilford students, who are scientists, experts in psychology, neuroscience, et cetera, and a former student herself. And I'd like to read just a couple of excerpts from the former student's email, and she gave me permission to do so. Dear Bill Bloss, my name is Emily, and I am a Guilford High School alumna, class of 2010. I'm writing to you with regards to the suggested start time switch, as I'm not able to attend tonight's meeting. I'd like this email to be included in the minutes. Thank you. To the board, I graduated in 2010 towards the top of my class and went on to get my BA at Vassar College. While at Guilford High School, I participated in sports as well as the drama department, participating in every production that went up during my 4 years. I took AP classes and took extra classes over summer vacation. I was not a slacker. However, during my time at Guildford High School, I battled depression and watched as many of my talented peers face the same demons. While the counseling staff was supportive, they couldn't fix the root of the problem. Too many of us had hours and hours of homework to complete, coming home after our multitude of extracurriculars, and then had to be awake by 5 a.m. to catch the bus every day. I was reprimanded more than once by my teachers for falling asleep during class, especially during my junior year. I'd like to give you a small window into my junior year experience. I was getting straight A's, playing junior varsity sport, getting leads in the plays, and it breaks in rehearsals, was texting my friend to see if she was hurting herself. The death of a classmate was announced in my AP Bio class, and I led a group of students down to guidance to make sure they each got seen by a counselor. Our teachers were not allowed to tell us it was suicide, but we all knew. We had seen it on Facebook the night before. We all knew when a few months later a classmate slit her wrists in the bathroom, even though the area was cleared and we were told it was a biohazard emergency. We knew when our friends were out of school for 2 months at a time that they didn't have mono, that they were at St. Raphael's Hospital. We knew something was wrong, and we knew, she's talking about the administration here. She says their hands are tied legally. Of course, you can't share private information about one student with another. I believe that's what she's referring to. We knew their hands were tied legally, but we also knew that our test scores were more important than our mental health. As we hit our test score milestones, and we hit our test score milestones, so how bad could it really be? As students, we knew what was going on and we felt undervalued. Guildford still has the 4th highest rate of teen suicide in the state. There's a 2017 study that evidences that with 5 years of hospital and medical examiner data. I'm happy to share that with anybody who hasn't read it yet.
Do you have a reference to that?
I do. I'll be happy to provide it to all of you, sure.
Okay.
Yep. In raw data, I believe we come in as 7th, and then they statistically analyze the data to include things like protective measures, et cetera.
I've heard that, and I've never seen it.
I'd be happy to share it with you.
Okay.
And the principal investigator is extremely responsive. He called me back within a week of me calling him to
Okay. Does this
ask him.
include all 169 towns, or is this a
It's
small-
everyone. The only
Okay.
one that wasn't included, I think, was Oxford.
Okay. If
Yeah.
you could-
The task force does have some of the data.
Okay, great.
Yep, I've got it all.
Okay.
I'll give you the appendices as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I would much rather give you something else, but it's fact. Let's see. There isn't a single solution to this problem, but there is a proven remedy which positively affects teen mental health across the board, and that is later start times. Later start times not only reduce depression in students, they also reduce the number of driving accidents, increase alertness during school hours, reduce sports injuries, and yes, boost test scores. Guildford already produces sought-after, well-qualified students. I want Guildford to start producing happier, healthier students. My younger brother is a current Guildford High School student. This is not an issue of an alumna with sour grapes about a decade ago high school experience. I deeply care about the well-being of the current students of Guildford High School. I strongly support the inclusion of a healthy high school start time in the budget for implementation in the 2018 school year. I know I've used up a lot of time already, so I'll try and be brief. I found out about the statistics about the Guildford suicide rate and hospitalization in the inpatient hospital for serious suicide attempts in November. Within a week of finding that out, I attended a teen suicide prevention forum out in Middlesex. And that very night, when I came home and discussed it with my teenager, who's a freshman at Guildford High School, he mentioned a girl who was making suicidal verbalizations, had mentioned suicide on more than one occasion, and mentioned having access to a firearm in the home and having had it at her head the day before and considering pulling the trigger. So you can imagine the blood drained out of my head, to be quite honest. I had never expected that. I always thought it was, far removed from me in our little house where it's nice and quiet in our little patch of heaven. And so right then and there, I got a chance to use the training and connect this child with resources to help her. I didn't know her last name and I didn't know her address. So the next morning, my son provided her with an information card that I had picked up, never thinking I would be able to use it at the suicide prevention forum the night before. And I called the school nurse, who intervened immediately. This is not a disconnected issue. These are not other people's kids. This is not outside of Guildford. This is Guildford-specific data. This is a difficult conversation to have. It's not as enjoyable as, you know, the sports teams that my kids are involved in or something else, but this is extremely real, and none of our kids are insulated from this, not one. I urge you strongly to implement later school start times, not only based on the suicide data specifically for Guildford that we have, but for a multitude of other reasons that have been scientifically proven out as well. A large study in Fairfax County, Virginia, found a drop in suicidality of 30% after implementing 1 hour later high school start time. It is the most effective public health intervention that we have to reduce mental illness, drug use in our kids, risky behavior like premature sexual behavior, and of course suicide. This is a Guildford problem, and we need a Guildford solution, and we really need it now. We really do. These kids can't wait. I get no joy out of being here and having difficult conversations with you guys, but I'll do it for as long as we have to do it until these kids get what they need. Okay, and I hope that you'll stand up and take the lead and take charge and show these kids why we're giving them such a good education. Why are we putting them through AP classes and all this difficult work and challenging their brains if we don't even apply science that is right at our fingertips? I think we really need to walk the walk. That's all I want to say. And I appreciate your time, and I know I'm running on.
Watch the cord.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks, Donald. And I don't know if I said, my name's Lauren Steele. I live at 112 Manor Road.
Yeah, and if you could sign in, the recording secretary is asking.
Okay,
that
sure.
we
Thanks
have
for
a
that.
clearer
Sorry I
record.
was late.
No. Others?
Good evening. I'm Christine Macaluso, 261 Dunrock Road. I am here to speak in support of full-time art teachers. I know you've addressed music teachers, but also full-time art teachers at all elementary schools. I have worked with the art teacher at A.W. Cox. She is a wonderful teacher, but cannot give the students the attention they deserve because she is spread across 2 schools. She does not have enough time between classes to prepare for the next class, as one class leaves, the next enters. I'm saying this from the point of view as a scientist, not an artist myself. However, I feel it is important that art be taught in the schools. Studies show that including art in the curriculum increases test scores. Through art, children learn creativity, confidence, and problem-solving skills, among other things. The Guggenheim Museum did a study in 2006 in which they sent artists into schools. They found that students in the program performed better in 6 categories of literacy and critical thinking skills than students in the same grade not enrolled in the program. When moving to Connecticut, one reason we chose Guildford was because of the quality of the public schools. As a concerned citizen and parent in Guildford, I would like to see a well-rounded education continue with a focus moving from STEM to STEAM. Thank you.
Thank you. Others?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Jeremy Taylor. I live at 71 Broad Street, and I have a 2-year-old, and I have a 2nd grader at A.W. Cox. So I'm going to be a Cox parent for the next 7 consecutive years. I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm here to to speak in support of those 2 additional music teacher positions and to thank you all very much for including them. I'm a music teacher myself in another district. I teach at Old Saybrook High School. And I wanted to put a word in for one of the benefits of music education that is very important to me at the moment. As a teacher, I'm working very, very hard to try and figure out avenues for my students to engage in what are commonly called the 21st century skills, collaboration, communication, complex problem solving. And music class seems to me to be very well positioned to provide experiences in those skills and to allow children time to practice those skills. When kids sing a song together, they're collaborating to communicate. But the skill that seems most important to me actually in music is empathy. And that seems like kind of a squishy skill until you consider empathy is the ability to perceive a situation from someone else's point of view. And that skill has been cited in internal studies by Google, for instance, as being predictive of success in a modern business atmosphere. And you can easily understand why. A product designer, for instance, needs to understand how someone besides themselves would interact with a product, for instance, or how an interface design could function not just across different people, but across different cultures. Empathy can be difficult to practice, but in music class, that happens every day. If you were to sing a song written by someone else, you're not just practicing reciting their point of view, you also have to perform it. You have to understand it well enough to get that point across. And our children, our littlest children, singing songs from other cultures, not just studying other cultures, but understanding them well enough to perform their music. It's an opportunity to perform empathy in a way that is not afforded as consistently in other areas. There's an equity component to it too, which I'm very grateful that the Guilford system is attempting to address. I think that music education is really important. So my kids have music opportunities outside the school day. I work hard to make that happen for them. Adding music teachers to the Guilford Public Schools would allow those opportunities for every child in the district. And as a town resident, as a parent, this is a wonderfully positive development. So I applaud that, and I'm grateful for it, and I do hope that those 2 positions continue to stay in the budget. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Others? Mr. Ptaraski, sure.
Joe Petrowski Sr., Valley Shores Drive. It's been a while since I've been up here. Before I begin, I'd like to welcome the new members of the board. Thank the existing members. You've done a fine job. Say hello to some of the familiar faces here. There seems to be a discussion going on about the replacement of the turf field. I guess it's coming up to be about 10 years old. And how are we going to pay for it? The Board of Ed says that they had nothing to do with the installation and they think Parks and Rec should pay for it. There's also conversation about postponing it till next year. I wonder what happens with the gate receipts for the games that are played on that field? Is there any income being derived?
Of course there is, and it's used for things like officials and some of the other...
Security, transportation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who collects the money at the gate? Is it a volunteer or is it
School staff usually.
school staff?
Usually.
And, who sets the fees?
I think the high school does.
Yeah, principal.
So the Board of Ed has an interest in the field. There's a financial interest. My point is that...
I just want to clarify,
Right.
and you know this. The decision to install the turf field at the high school was a decision of the town, not the Board of Education.
Exactly.
So, but having said that, the Board of the students at Guilford High School in particular get a lot of use out of it, clearly.
Right.
And it is going to have to be replaced, and it's going to have to be done responsibly, and it has to be done safely, so.
Exactly. I'm going to make a suggestion, and it's not up to this board, but it's up to the Board of Finance. I want to pull $600,000 from fund balance. That'll solve the whole dilemma. Get it paid for. We got the money there. We've just went through 8 years of euphoria with surpluses year after year. Might be a way to fund it. I'd like to thank you for the music teacher. I've been hearing her for 20 years. About time. They're requesting $60,150,000, which is $1.5 million over last year. We hear about efficiencies and the town has to be more efficient. I don't know what it takes to run a school system, and most of us don't. But we got a good manager. That's where the efficiency is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments? Please, come on up.
Hi, I'm Joseph Lim. I'm at 58 Cotulo Drive. I've got 3 children, 2 of which are in the school system at A.W. Cox, one who will be joining their older brother and sister very soon. This is my first time speaking with this board. I want to publicly acknowledge the substantial commitment of this board and the administration for providing Guilford a school system that we can be very, very proud of. And it's one reason why many of us have moved into this town, because of the excellence of this school system. I'll be very brief. I think that the 2 issues I want to touch on is one related to the school start time. It's been discussed ad nauseum here. I also support the later start time. There's substantial literature and science behind this, as has been discussed. I also like to speak in support of the music budget, which I think is a strong voice of support in terms of the importance of the arts to our children's education. I'm a physician by background, and I think that the science behind this in terms of cognitive development, neural development, and its direct impact on social and emotional development, as well as test scores, are all well documented, and particularly in terms of the growth of key areas within the brain, and particularly the corpus callosum, that are very critical, especially in the early ages, especially before age 6, between age 6 and 12. And I think that the earlier you can start music education, the greater the benefit can be demonstrated long-term. And it's been demonstrated on both EEG and MRI studies that have been carried out in a longitudinal fashion. So I think that the commitment, I think, is a very good one, and I hope one that will be growing further in future years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Others? You haven't said anything yet? You're
You guys know how I feel.
Yeah, we do. That's fine. Well, I'm just going to mention, I think many people who were here have already spoken that are not members of either the Board of Finance, and I should note that Chairman Ailes is here, or was here. Is here, there he is, hiding. He took his coat off. And Mr. Trotta, Jonathan Trotta, is also here. So we'll be going in front of the Board of Finance, I think February the 10th, I want to say, or somewhere in that area.
13th, 15th, it's in that.
15th, okay, to present the Board of Education's budget. But, you know, I know there's intense interest in the start time issue, and I just want to mention 2 things on that. One of the things I know the task force is looking at is something that would really be one of the biggest changes that we've made in Guilford in many, many years, and that is a possible reconfiguration of the 2 middle schools to make it a Baldwin be a North 5 through 8 school and Adams be a South 5 through 8 school. This would, and there's a lot of arguments in favor of it, and there are a lot of arguments against it. There are some implementation issues. There are lots of issues, as is true with everything else on this particular issue, by the way. But the real problem, one of the major problems that we have in Guilford with the start times is the size of our town with the way our campuses are constructed. The middle bus run that goes to Adams and Baldwin is a huge bus run. 2 children can be picked up at Sachem's Head or at Wimler Farm up in North Guilford, and they've got to go, the bus has to go to Baldwin, then it has to go to Adams, then it might have to go back up to Jones again to pick up elementary kids. That middle run is a really difficult run. If the schools were reconfigured to be 5 through 8 schools, then that would really shorten that middle run dramatically in a cost-neutral way, by the way. I think when we looked at this carefully last year, the estimate that we had from the bus company was that if just by adding buses, it would cost about an extra 1.5% to our budget, roughly, somewhere in the area of $800,000. Now, could be a little more, could be a little less, but that was the estimate that we had. This year, one of the larger increases that we have in this budget is because of a rebid bus contract. We had a 5-year contract that was really very favorable to Guilford. I want to say it was a 1.5% increase a year. And there was a reason for that. It wasn't that we were such great negotiators. It was because the bus company wanted to break into the area. And, They wanted to get into it. It was a renewal, and they were trying to hold the contract. They were trying to get a bigger presence in the area. Well, they've got the presence now, and they're not interested in a loss leader anymore. So the increase is, I think, 20%.
20%.
And so it's
$300,000.
Yeah, so that's about 20. That's about a fifth of the increase in your proposed budget is just based on that alone. And that was publicly bid. It was blind bid. There were 7 companies that attended the bid conference. 2 actually submitted a bid. So that's just the way it is, unless we can try to do something slightly different, which is where we may be able to negotiate a little bit more. But that's the challenge that we've got on this, and we all understand the science. We know that. We are trying very, very hard to balance everything that needs to be balanced. And I think one of the speakers mentioned that when it comes to emotional issues and stress-related issues, that there is no single answer. I think that we agree with that. And if removing one of the transitions in middle school helps make the middle school experience less stressful, it may be part of a bigger, rather than trying to solve things with one thread at a time, maybe we should be looking at a much more overall holistic approach, and perhaps that's the case. But anyway, we're waiting for the task force to make its recommendations, and we are very interested in what they will recommend. So that's just a little update on where we are. But go ahead.
Can I just ask a question? If only 2 of the 7 submitted a bid,
Right.
Can somebody go back and say, why didn't you submit?
Yeah, the question was what happened to the other 5. I think that the anecdotal information is, I'm on the listserv for the Board of Ed chairs. Fairfield just went out to bid. They got 2 bids. It's not a good business right now, apparently, at least according, the market seems to be reflecting that it is a very, the antitrust lawyers would say it's got a high entrance, high barriers to entry, because you have to buy 30 buses, or probably 32 buses, or lease them or do something else. So it's got high upfront costs. It is very, very, very hard to hire drivers right now. I don't know, if anybody who's driven anywhere in the state of Connecticut, you see a bus parked on the side of the road with a big sign across it that says, drive for us. And so it just seems to be what the market is doing right now. I did talk to or exchange emails with a board chair from Preston. They've actually hired and decided to continue to hire. Their bus operation is all in-house. It's all done by the town. That's good for some things, and it's not good for some things. And I'm trying to look at the numbers and seeing if that makes any sense at all. But I think there would be. It doesn't strike me as it would make a lot of sense, frankly. We'd have to have somewhere around 40 drivers or 45 drivers here. That would be a big increase in salaries.
Mr. Walsh, you alluded to this, but I think it is important to note that the board has not awarded this bid to either of those companies. We are looking into other opportunities, and we are looking to ways to respond to the current situation. The bottom line is we're required to provide bus transportation. It is a must-have for next school year. So while we're looking for opportunities and ways to respond, those opportunities and the ways in which we may be able to respond will be somewhat limited. So we're carrying that budget figure of $300,000, and hopeful that we can find a better course forward at this time.
Any other comments or questions for that matter? Yes?
I just have a question. Can a company resubmit their bid at this time?
A company that bid or a company that,
Company that bid that backed out, can they rebid?
I think it would probably have, I don't know the answer to that. I think the answer is no. I'm being told by our business manager, it would have to go out to bid again, and then they could, the question was, could a company that attended the bid meeting and then didn't submit a bid, could they now bid?
Right.
No, I think that once,
Only
only if we
choose
go
not
out.
to award and go back out on the street.
Correct. If we
We'd have to
one of the
rebid.
opportunities
We'd have
we're
to
exploring.
rebid the whole thing.
Right, we'd have to rebid the entire contract, or the
Well,
entire contract.
because there's circumstances involved that you don't know about. That's why other companies didn't bid.
Okay, well, I'd encourage, if you know some of those circumstances, I'd encourage you to, that's Linda Trudeau over in the corner, who's our business, okay, and she can, given my day job, I have suspicions, of course, but
That's why you're so good at your day job.
well, I don't know. I just, it was surprising to us, frankly, that we only got 2 bids, but in any event. Yes, ma'am.
Well, Guilford has a reputation.
Okay.
Quick question, with looking at the reconfiguration of having a 5/8, do I have to go up?
If it's a short question, you can stay there.
It is a short
Okay.
question, I promise.
I'm-
With the 5/8 north and 5/8 south, has the task force looked at like what the potential start times?
I think the question was, what would the savings and start time be just for that? I think Dr. Freeman has looked at that, and it's in the area of 25 minutes, I want to say.
15 to 20 minutes. So should we move into a situation where the 2 middle schools are standalone bus runs and the bus does not have to go to both locations, the middle school and elementary times would not need to change at all, and that would afford as much as 15 to 20 minutes of a later start time for the high school. The high school start time task force is looking for a more significant change in high school start times than 15 or 20 minutes. We have our eyes set on a minimum of a 30-minute to 35-minute gain in sleep. But the change that Mr. Bloss discussed would be the first half of what we're looking for without impacting the middle schools or the elementaries at all, and in a way that is most likely going to be cost neutral. I say most likely because there is a lot of work that needs to be done in what 2 north-south middle schools would look like. There may be unanticipated costs. I'm only talking about busing
Yeah,
cost
that's
neutral. The
important.
restructuring itself may be could be dramatically different than cost neutral.
Okay, thank you.
Have we requested from any potential bidders, bus service bidders, some sort of a plan or schedule that would reflect later start times for high school?
The question was whether the bidders submitted bids reflecting potential later start times. The bid package allows us to control the times.
In addition to that, the bid package included 4 or 5 alternate bid scenarios, some of which were some of our most creative times, and none of the companies chose to bid on those more unusual, more creative scenarios that we presented.
There was I think there was a request that we bid out the high school runs separately from the middle school and the elementary school runs. Nobody bid.
Cherry pick?
No.
We allowed them, we gave the opportunity. For instance, one of the ideas from the task force was that if the high school was on a standalone run and not connected to the times of the middle and elementaries, we could choose what time to start simply based on what was best for our high school students. There'd be no cascade effect. That standalone run, which was bid as an alternate, nobody chose to bid on that standalone run. Nobody was interested in that as an alternate bid.
Which makes sense as you think about it. You know, you're not going to have 30 extra buses and 32-hour-a-day bus drivers. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We wanted to test the market. We wanted to see if we could demand that sort of service.
You mentioned Preston. Are you aware of any other, and if so, how many other school districts in Connecticut run their own bus service?
You thought there was one other one.
I'm aware of one other, Montville. Now, that's only that I'm aware of. That doesn't mean that there are no others, but those are the only 2 of which I'm currently aware.
And I think Newtown used to have, individual companies would have individual routes. Like, in other words, somebody would own a bus And they would, right, am I got that
Yes,
right?
in just
You were in
they
They
Newtown.
were parked in the driveway.
Oh, here we go.
Newtown has 74 distinct
I should let
busing contracts.
Mr. Bagley explain this, given that he was on the Newtown Board of Education once upon a time. So what was the situation in Newtown?
Well, in terms of maintenance of the buses, there was a lot of inconsistency and lots of breakdowns during the course of the day during a pickup. Other individuals did a wonderful job in terms of maintaining. So lots of inconsistencies in managing the busing situation. And it really was not very appealing looking in the town itself with buses parked in their driveways. And I'm talking about the 1980s. And so I'm not sure how long ago
I believe they're in their second bus contract, so it might have been 5 years ago that they moved away from that structure, and they're in the second renewal of their bus contract. And Haddam Killingworth, one of our closest neighbors, went out of the private bus business approximately 5 years ago and contracted with STA after they
Got their foot in the door with us.
Got their foot in their door with Guilford.
Great. Yes, sir.
Have the towns ever come together into try and attempt to get one contract, like Killingworth, Branford, Guilford, and Durham all try and get one contract?
There has been a lot of work done with the regional educational resource centers, the educational resource centers, the RESCs, and it's nothing that has come about, but the RESCs have done a lot of work trying to consolidate busing contracts as well as medical insurance buys. It's something the state's very aware of. There hasn't been a successful attempt, to my knowledge, at this time.
Mr. Petrowski, do you?
Yeah, with all the talk about the school start times, when I was in high school, we started at 6:45. Juniors and seniors and got out at 12:50. The freshmen and sophomore started at 12:45 and got out at 5:50. Split sections in the same building.
All right, well, that's not our goal.
And I was a victim of that as well.
Thank you for sharing, but we'll Ms. Lowe.
I've become aware of a heating problem at Cox Elementary School since the Christmas break. There was no heat in at least one classroom there, and the children had to sit there in their coats, and as of last week, it was minimally fixed. So I'm wondering if there's a need to budget for repair or replacement of their heating system.
Well, we've got a lot on the proposed, at least Dr. Freeman's proposed budget has some bonding items relating to climate, HVAC at Baldwin, and some other work at Jones, I know. As long as you're here, I should say this, I suppose. We've got 6 really pretty old buildings. The one we're sitting in right now, when you walk out to the front, that building was built during the Franklin Roosevelt administration. It is going to be 100 years old in 18 years. So we don't think we need to build any new buildings. We've made that commitment when the high school was built. We are not going to change on that. But the next newest building in the district is Baldwin, and that was built in 71, I think, or 71, I think. And it is all original electrical and all original HVAC, so it's just got to be undone. It's got to be redone. It's got to be fixed. We're putting new windows in right now up at Baldwin. Jones is going to need a fair amount of work. Cox is going to need work. I hadn't heard about the specific heating problem.
We have a 10-year calendar of repairs. The HVAC systems that are ahead of Cox in that line would be at Baldwin and at Jones. What I can say is that incredible cold snap that we came off of tested the systems in all of our buildings. And so we had issues in multiple buildings. We had frozen pipes. We had a sprinkler head in this building right over the principal's desk that burst because of the frozen pipes. And so we do believe that as the temperatures warm, we'll be able to catch up. But we have a 10-year calendar of significant capital improvements. We're working very carefully with the Board of Education and with the town to try to schedule those capital improvements in a way that is responsible and stays ahead of any catastrophic breakdown. We're very proud of the work that we've done, but there's much more work to be done in 6 of these 7 schools.
Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns? Yes, ma'am.
Just with the idea of having the 2 middle schools serving
fifth graders through eighth graders. It's just such a huge developmental difference between a fifth grader and an eighth grader. I think I'm comfortable. I just have a child who's at Baldwin now, so I know that separation between those ages is possible, but I'm not familiar with this building. Is that just something that's being taken into consideration?
It's, the question was whether the developmental differences between fifth graders and eighth graders would allow some degree of separation during the school day. Much easier at Baldwin than here, obviously, but
I know about, yeah, I just didn't, I'm not familiar with
it's something that would be part of it.
One of the
There's
things that
best-
would go into the planning, of course.
Yeah.
And we actually, Branford does 5 through 8 and has done it for many years successfully, so we would certainly collaborate and find out what they're doing well.
And it's not quite the same thing, but for anyone who is not aware, we used to in Guilford have Baldwin and Adams as 6 through 8 separate schools. So just an FYI, if somehow anyone missed that.
And in fact, a significant movement nationwide is returning to K through 8 elementary schools. So you're absolutely right. It is significant. We need to pay attention to it. But it's actually 5 through 8 is a very common grade configuration, and we would have a lot of positive examples to learn from and make sure that we pay attention to those concerns and address them properly.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Any of the board members have any questions that we need to do now as opposed to tomorrow or next week?
I'd just like to note that this is a spectacular turnout. We have had these opportunities in other budget years, and there have been 8 or 10 people in the audience. I would just like to really thank everybody for coming out and being part of the conversation this year. We really do appreciate it. It really does help the board in their deliberations and decisions moving forward.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. I guess the schedule now is we have another one of these tomorrow night, 7:30 at same place, and then we meet to vote next Monday. Monday night at the high school?
The high school.
Okay, and so that'll be at 7:30. So is there a motion to adjourn? All in favor? All in favor? Thank you.
February 15th, I believe.